I'm certainly not the only one that feels like the latest federal budget in Australia is the epitome of tall poppy syndrome. For those that don't know, tall poppy syndrome is when successful people get resented or attacked just for their achievements. And it feels like this budget is chasing after anyone trying to get ahead. People looking to invest, sacrifice now, save up, build their finances so they can maybe retire early one day. Get out of the grind a bit sooner than everyone else. But honestly, most people would agree that just getting by is already hard enough. Living a comfortable life, or even just covering the basics on the wages people are actually earning right now, that's a struggle on its own. Inflation has been nuts these past few years. We almost hit an annual rate of 7.8% at the end of 2022. It's come down since then, but it's already eaten away at any wage growth workers have had. Effectively, people's incomes have been going backwards. Life has gotten pretty tough for pretty much everyone, and I think that my generation, Gen Z, is starting to feel the full brunt of it. If you're like me, you probably finished school in the last few years and moved on to uni, work, a trade, or a mix of all three. For me, I started uni in 2025 and work a casual job on weekends. Sounds normal enough, but honestly, I'd say I'm lucky to even have a job. I remember applying for over 100 different jobs on Seek over the summer after high school. No luck, not even a single reply. The only reason I got my current part-time job was through my network. A family member helped me out. Otherwise, I reckon I'd be looking, or worse, I would have given up at some point and just thrown all my energy into uni instead. And I'm lucky I could even do that, living at home rent free. I know plenty of people don't have that privilege. In fact, I remember my first week of uni before a lecture talking to this guy who got introduced. He was telling me he was struggling to find a job and that his mum was about to start charging him board $250 a fortnight. He didn't even have a job yet. Meanwhile, I had mine getting paid $25 an hour, lucky to scrape together 10 hours a week. I remember thinking if I was in his position, half my income would be gone every fortnight just on board, and he'd even have a job. The more I talk to people my age, the more I realize this isn't some rare sob story. It's basically the norm now. I've got mates who did a trade straight out of school, earning decent money, who still can't find anywhere to live that isn't a 40-minute drive from work. I've got mates doing a double degree, working two casual jobs, and still asking their parents to cover their phone bill. Nobody's living some lavish lifestyle here. Everyone's just trying to keep their head above water. And when you zoom out and actually look at the numbers, it makes sense why it feels this way. Youth unemployment and underemployment are sitting well above the national average. Even when young people do have a job, a huge chunk of us are stuck in casual work with no guaranteed hours. You can't budget properly, you can't save properly, and you definitely can't plan for a future when you don't even know how many shifts you're getting next week. If you've got a job, you're already lucky, but it's not like the wages get you very far anyway. Petrol, food, PT, hanging out with mates, it all adds up fast. I had dinner and dessert with a few mates the other week. $38 for pasta and a small glass of soft drink. Then we grabbed gelato after, another $9.50 for two scoops in a cup. People wonder why Gen Z just scroll all day. It's free, or at least a lot cheaper than actually going out and doing something. It's unfortunate, but rotting has become cheaper than actually enjoying yourself. Groceries are the same story. I did a shop for myself last week just to see what it'd cost to eat properly for a week if I wasn't living at home. Well over $100 for basic stuff. Chicken, rice, a few vegetables, a couple of easy meals, nothing fancy. A few years ago, that same trolley would have costed noticeably less. It's not just a vibe, it's a genuine erosion of purchasing power, and wages simply haven't kept up. But let's not forget the main reason we're actually cooked here. The budget itself. The removal of the CGT discount and the changes to negative gearing. Now you might think, how does this even impact Gen Z? We don't own homes, we probably don't pay rent yet, and we don't have any investments. That's exactly the issue. We don't have any of that yet. At the rate things are going, I think it's only going to get harder to get any of it. The government likes to claim that only 1 in 10 people under 30 or so even own shares. I'd wager that number's undervalued. It's a pretty convenient metric for them to pull out to support their agenda. Maybe my sample's biased, but I know plenty of people feeling the exact same way I do. Things are already tough enough as it is, so trying to sacrifice and save a bit here and there to start an investment account, hoping to build up a nest egg or even just a house deposit, feels like an uphill battle. Yet the government seems to assume Gen Z doesn't invest, so there's no real downside for us here. Instead, they seem to think this budget will get us all into the housing market by triggering the next housing crash. And sure, house prices have started to slip slightly, but a 5 to 10% correction isn't going to exactly move the needle. In fact, there are some genuinely serious arguments against this budget when it comes to young people. The first is that rents are likely to rise. The proposed changes reduce the return investors get from capital gains when they sell, through removing the discount and shifting to an indexation system. So if these changes pass, investors will lean harder on rental income instead of relying on negative gearing and the CGT discount for their returns, which means rents go up. Treasury even admits as much in their reporting. Longer term, there's good reason to think there's less investor participation in the property market overall, which means less development, less new supply hitting the rental market, and prices staying propped up as a result. Think about what this actually means for someone my age. Most of us are about to start renting, whether it's a uni share house or our first place after moving out. If rents climb a little bit higher on top of what they already are in a brutal rental market, that's less money left over for each fortnight to actually save for a deposit. It turns into this horrible loop. You need to save for a house, but you can't save because rent's eating your income. And rents keep rising partly because of the very policy that was supposedly designed to help you buy a house in the first place. It just doesn't add up. The second argument is that entry-level housing becomes more competitive, making it harder for first-home buyers to get a foot in the door, which is the opposite of what the government's pitching. This comes down to how the removal of negative gearing won't apply to new properties built going forward. So investors chasing a negative gearing strategy will shift away from established homes and start targeting new house and land packages instead, since that's where the tax benefit still exists. These house and land packages have traditionally been one of the more accessible options for first home buyers. So if wealthier investors start piling into the exact same segment, competition ramps up and it gets even harder for first home buyers to get in. So essentially what you've got is a policy that pushes investors out of the established housing market and straight into the one quarter of the market that was actually somewhat accessible to people like me. Instead of freeing up more entry-level stock for first home buyers, it risks funneling investor money directly in to competing for these properties against us. It's the kind of unintended consequence that sounds fine in a press release, but falls apart pretty quickly once you actually sit down and think it through logically. Put those two arguments together, and I really struggle to see how Gen Z comes out ahead after this budget. Going forward, we're paying higher rents while trying to invest and build wealth for a future home that keeps getting harder to actually buy, only to then pay higher tax rates on whatever investments we liquidate just to scrape together our deposit. That's the cherry on top from my perspective. And it's not happening in isolation either. We're the generation set to inherit whatever's left of the age pension system, whatever's left of super policy after a few more rounds of tinkering, and a climate that previous generations have left in a fair bit of disrepair too. I'm trying to not be dramatic about it, but when you stack up all of that on top of a budget that seems to work against the handful of things young people can actually control, saving, investing, and trying to get ahead through their own effort, it starts to feel less like bad luck and more like a pattern. Honestly, I don't know what to say. It genuinely annoys me people on social media who are defending this budget, saying it's giving them hope they'll finally buy a home one day. Screw that dream. The goalposts have been shifting every year anyway, but this feels like a proper leap, given how capital's going to flow under these new changes. To be fair though, I do get why the government's doing this. Housing affordability is a genuine crisis and something had to give. Nobody sensible thinks the status quo before this budget was working either. Maybe the intention behind scrapping the discount and reworking negative gearing was really good, but intention and outcome are two very different things. And if the outcome ends up being higher rents and more competition in the first home buyer segment, it's fair to ask whether this is the right way to fix things. There are other ideas floating around too, releasing more government land, cutting red tape on new investments, actually building more homes at scale, and get a lot of less airtime than tax tweaks that sound good in a headline. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Frustrated, a bit cynical, and still trying to do the responsible thing. Save what I can, invest what I can, and hope that by the time I'm actually in a position to buy something, the settings haven't shifted against me all over again. Anyway, like and sub and let me know in the comments what you think about the budget.